You've probably seen the Iron Maiden. It's the ultimate symbol of medieval religious torture, a horrific, spiked cabinet designed to slowly impale anyone trapped inside. But modern historians agree that the Iron Maiden is a 19th century fabrication, invented entirely to act as a terrifying museum display for tourists. The actual horrors of the Inquisition didn't require elaborate Hollywood-style machines. This is an authentic Inquisition record. The reality was carried out by a highly organized, mundane legal bureaucracy, complete with pristine, flowing handwriting that meticulously tracked every interrogation. To understand how this system functioned, we have to look at how they viewed sin. Today, we treat a crime as a personal action. Back then, sin was viewed as a public contagion. The church believed that a single sick sheep could infect and ultimately damn the entire flock. This created a brutal theological logic. The physical body was temporary, but the human soul was eternal. Therefore, if authorities had to break a person's physical body to save their soul from hell, the inflicted pain was actually considered the ultimate act of divine compassion. By classifying physical destruction as an act of mercy, religious institutions engineered a perfectly legal machine of terror, one that didn't hide in the shadows, but operated right out in the open. The system began by manufacturing community paranoia. When inquisitors arrived in a city, they issued an edict of grace. This gave citizens a 40-day window to step forward and confess their own sins, but it also pressured locals to inform on their friends, neighbors, and family members. If you were informed on, the arrest usually happened in the middle of the night. You were thrown into total isolation. The authorities refused to tell you why you were there. You had to sit in a dark cell and guess your own crimes. Once inside the interrogation room, the process was governed by a strict theological law, ecclesia non-novit sanguinum, meaning the church does not shed blood. Bureaucrats bypassed this rule by inventing physical tortures that broke the body without spilling a single drop of blood. They used methods like the water cure to simulate drowning, or the strappato, shown in this schematic, where a prisoner's hands were tied behind their back and attached to a pulley. Gravity and heavy iron weights were mathematically applied to dislocate the shoulders, leaving the skin completely unbroken. The objective of these brutal tools was never to execute the prisoner. The sole purpose was to extract a formal legal confession. In the midst of sheer agony, the accused would admit to things they had never done just to make it stop. The interrogation room was not a place to discover the truth. It was a factory, designed to meet a bureaucratic quota of confessions through legalized physical destruction. This is the Plaza Mayor in Madrid, one of the massive public spaces where the next phase of religious justice took place. To maintain control, the system required the active participation of the community out in the open square. Punishments were turned into highly attended public festivals. In Puritan America, devices like this scold's bridle featured an internal iron plate that pressed down on a woman's tongue to force her into silence while she was paraded through town. In Spain, the auto da fe, or act of faith, drew entire cities to watch the humiliation. This Goya painting shows condemned prisoners sitting passively in pointed San Benito hats, illustrating another major loophole. The church maintained its hands were clean by never executing anyone directly. Instead, they formally handed the guilty over to the secular government, the civil authorities, who then carried out the burning at the stake. There was a massive financial incentive driving this machine. The inquisitors targeted wealthy merchants and landowners. Once a person was declared a heretic, the church and the state legally confiscated their property and split the profits between themselves. The public spectacle of punishment served a dual purpose. It weaponized the community's own fear to maintain ideological control, while simultaneously seizing immense wealth from its citizens. By the 18th century, the Age of Enlightenment was taking hold across Europe. Philosophers openly challenged the twisted logic behind the religious legal machine. This is a bust of one of those thinkers, Cesar Beccaria. Beccaria published a devastating argument against state and religious brutality. He pointed out a simple fact: torture does not produce the truth. It only produces whatever the torturer wants to hear to make the pain stop. This realization helped spark the separation of church and state. Governments dismantled the old Inquisition tribunals, replacing theological mandates with evidence-based secular law and the early concepts of human rights. the definitive closure of this era took centuries to arrive. In this photograph from the year 2000, Pope John Paul II officially apologized for the religious violence and extreme methods committed by the Inquisition. The introduction of science and secular reason dismantled the physical torture devices, forcing our justice systems to rely on tangible evidence rather than blind faith. Today, the racks and spiked collars gather dust in museums, reduced to tourist attractions. But while the physical tools are gone, the human desire to publicly shame remains entirely intact. We can see a direct, uncomfortable parallel between the public theatricality of the Puritan, pillory, and the mechanics of modern internet cancel culture. The town square has simply been replaced by the timeline, where crowds still gather to hurl abuse at the condemned. The philosopher Hannah Arendt described this phenomenon as the banality of evil. The greatest danger to a society isn't a handful of crazed sadists. The real threat comes from normal, everyday people who believe their cruelty is completely justified by their own absolute moral righteousness. We have to protect our freedom of thought and remember the dark history of these tribunals. If we forget how easily a crowd can turn righteous beliefs into weapons, we risk becoming the unthinking digital inquisitors of our own era.